A Sydney childcare worker facing more than 320 charges of alleged child abuse has now been named. 35-year-old Hamish Tait worked at or attended 62 childcare centres over 16 years. A court order protecting his identity was lifted on Monday. 22 alleged victims are still to be identified. Reporter Adele Ferguson has carried out extensive investigations into the abuse scandals in the childcare sector. She joins me now. Adele, great to have you here.
Thank you.
Who is Hamish Tait and why are we hearing about him now?
Yeah, so he was arrested over 12 months ago. We're finally hearing about him now. If he is found guilty of those charges, he will be one of the worst pedophiles ever to be in childcare in Australia.
And he's been part of your investigations in the past before he was named. Shouldn't the number of centres he worked at that I referenced just then, shouldn't that have been an immediate, obvious red flag to childcare centre operators?
It should be, but the problem is with childcare, it's become casualised. So the workers are underpaid, overworked, so there's so much churn going on and there's so much casualisation that a lot of either convicted pedophiles or pedophiles who've been charged or waiting in the wings, they've been working in dozens and dozens of centres.
Let me ask you this. I think you've said this in your reporting before, and just to reiterate, because it's such an important point, childcare, you say, actually is a target location for these people, for these pedophiles.
Absolutely. On the dark web, there are over 45,000 different membership groups. Some of those membership groups have 2 million people in them. So it's really pervasive. And they're talking about childcare. They're saying there's loose regulation and there's lack of supervision, so it's an absolute place to hunt. And they are strategic and they share tips. And childcare is the place.
So we went through a period of the government bringing forward reforms after some of the earlier scandals that came out. Now, would any of those reforms that the government has introduced have caught someone, have stopped someone doing the kinds of things that Hamish Tait is accused of doing?
Not necessarily, because at the end of the day, it's all about supervision. So some of those things that they introduced was mobile devices shouldn't be allowed in childcare, that there's a national register now so that you can monitor where the childcare workers are. And there's also mandatory reporting within 24 hours. They are safeguards, but if you have a lack of supervision, then people like that can just carry on. And the case that really resonated with me was Ashley Griffith, the worst pedophile. He's in prison for life, childcare worker. And the court found that he was setting up tripods in childcare centres and filming for up to 30 minutes child abuse. You can only do that if there's a lack of supervision. Where are the childcare workers? There's also a culture of silence.
And it's also true, isn't it, that the government brought in a system of training for childcare workers in relation to some of these issues. Has that training been rolled out? Are people doing it? How much improvement have we seen since you first started investigating this issue?
Yeah, so you're right. There has been child protection rolled out for childcare workers. It's mandatory. But what I've been hearing from workers is there's a lot of cheating going on. They don't have time to do it. They don't want to do it in some cases. And so they're sharing the notes.
Now, I think I ask you this every time we are in the unhappy position of relying on your expertise to talk about this subject. But every time a story like this, of this kind of magnitude, is brought forward when someone is charged, it's a terrifying moment for parents everywhere. You identify supervision as one of the key elements here. What do parents do? How do they know that the changes the government brought in have been brought in? How do they know whether or not the supervision is at the level to make their children safe, even from people who are targeting a centre?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that they can do. Firstly, they can have a look, is there a lot of churn going on in the centre? So if they're seeing new faces all the time, that's a red flag. If they are seeing that childcare workers are disengaged, or if that's another red flag. If the culture isn't there, so they seem fearful for saying what's going on, another red flag. And finally, I think they really need to have a look at, go in during the day, just pop in and see other childcare workers that should be there that aren't there, because a lot of them are on shift work. They just come in for a few hours because the centres are now largely for profit and the biggest cost is labour. And so a lot of the centres try and cut costs. So that's probably the biggest thing, is just popping in if you can to see what's going on.
And this is a new identity that's being revealed. Are there more people whose names are suppressed that we are going to find out about in the future, or is this the last of this terrible cycle?
Unfortunately, there are others. We identified more than 10 and they still haven't come to pass. They're still waiting in the wings. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because less than 2% are ever caught or charged.
Sobering words. As always, Adele, thank you for coming in and for your expertise and the investigations that you've carried out. That is at the base of that expertise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.